background on what I do. We've got a PowerPoint up there. Let's flip over, and I talked a little bit about my background, and so let's talk about flipping a house. So everybody seems to want to be involved. There's probably a dozen successful TV shows on flipping of properties. Makes it look pretty easy. There's a whole lot more involved than you would think. But it all comes down to acquisition. I mean, the key to being able to have a successful flip of a house is not only the acquisition of it, but an acquisition at a price that it will allow you to make some profit at the end of the day. Now, I've been able to streamline the cost of construction, and I've done that without skimping on product, but I've done that by just learning how to buy better than most people can do. On the last house that I flipped, I have over a $10,000 retail appliance package in the kitchen that I ended up paying $2,200 for. And so therefore, when you can do that on all kind of acquisitions and product that you're working with, you can add to the bottom line. But let's go back and focus on acquisition. It's very hard to find a flippable property on the MLS, especially in today's market when almost anything will sell. I looked at a distressed, beat-up townhouse in Reston this past week, and Reston townhouse market under $400,000 currently today. There are 0 townhouses for sale. There are maybe 10 under contracts. So that house going on the market will be the only player in town, and where it probably has a value of under $300,000, it would sell probably in a minute with a list price of $325,000 and then get offers and get bid up. Now, I looked at it to see, number one, did I want to flip it? And to flip it, I'd have to acquire it at $250,000, $260,000, $270,000. And this being somebody that's a friend of mine, I'm not going to go offer her $270,000 for a townhouse that I could sell in an as-is condition for over $330,000. So then I look at it and say, well, what's the up end? What's the up end if I go in and renovate it? Well, it's going to take $50,000 to $60,000 to do what would be carpet, paint, kitchen, bathrooms, hardware, landscaping. It does have a new roof on it, but other than that, there isn't any. It has a new furnace, but it does not have a new air conditioner. So there's $50,000 there, and then so you look at it and say, well, are you gonna be able to break 400 with this house? No, you're not. So therefore, it's not a flippable property. It's a flippable property at an acquisition below market, but it's hard to get below market, especially in a market like today when there's such a short inventory out there. So I found Falls Church is a very, very workable area, and I've settled in there over the last 3 years. There's an intersection of Route 50 and Graham Road, and off of Graham Road there's a subdivision called Tyler Park that were mainly Cape Cods that were built in the around 1940. But they were brick and they had a basement, but most of these houses, the basement was pretty rough, pretty damp, and unless you did something to stop the dampness in the basement, you're not going to get finished area down there very easily. But I got in there 2 years ago in a market where these houses in fair to poor condition were selling close to $400,000 for 1,100 square feet of a Cape Cod, which you might have 800 square feet usable downstairs and then maybe 350 upstairs because the roofs are going to go like this. And so if you have a 24 front to back, you're coming in 7 feet front, 7 feet back. You only have 10 feet of buildable space. And of that 10 feet of buildable space, you're following a roof line up. So depending on how far you drop the roof down, you might get anywhere as low as 18 inches of full height to maybe 30 inches of full height, and then the rest of it is sloping down so you can't turn right or left off of the center without walking into a wall. And that's a typical Cape Cod type of a build out. What I've discovered on this last house is how remarkable taking a 33 by 24 box changes when you cut the roof off and just go straight up with the walls and turn it into a colonial. It's a massive, massive difference, and it's a game changer. But we'll get more to that in a little while. But so I was able to, I had a builder call me and say, I've got a person that wants to sell me a house to tear down and build on, and don't think there's the money to be able to do that even at the price she was asking, which was $325, which was ridiculously low, off market of course. And I went and looked at it. I said, oh, I can do wonders with this house at $325. And the top end of that neighborhood on something really nice was $600. Now, if you're going to flip, you're going to end up selling above comparables. Now that'll lead to how important and how vital the appraisal is and how difficult the appraisal is when you're working without comps, but I'll touch more on that in a while too. But I got in at $325. I did not I did structurally change the house. I put a side addition on, one level side addition that ran 24, which is the length of the house, by 13. I turned that into a master bedroom and a master bath, but I really only had a living room, dining room, a small kitchen, a bedroom and a bathroom on the main level. And then upstairs, I was lucky that I had a center staircase so I could go up to the top of the stairs and turn right or left and create 2 bathrooms. A lot of these Cape Cods you can enter only at one end, and you can't get the second bedroom in because it's a shotgun type of approach, and there's no way for a hallway to get. So to have 2 bedrooms, you'd have to walk through one to get to the other. But if it has a center staircase, you at least have the luxury of going either side of the upstairs to put the 2 bathrooms in. But we put a front dormer on it that was 5 feet wide that gave us room to put a bathroom upstairs. So we added a bathroom upstairs through a 5-foot dormer. We had 2 bedrooms and a bathroom upstairs. We had 2 bedrooms downstairs, one being the master. And we took that house from $325 to $700. And so not being able to break the $600 barrier in there, I was able to break it by $100,000. But we're talking more about acquisition. So once you've located somewhere where you would like to be, then you're going to be there for 3 to 6 months. You better start learning what's going on in that neighborhood real fast, because there were dozens and dozens of potential properties in there that you could acquire and be able to do the same thing. So in doing that, I came across a second property that had a breezeway that was a finished room that led to a 1-car garage already put on it, and garages are just few and far between in that type of a neighborhood. And so I ended up going and talking to that lady because one of the people I had met said this lady is probably going to be selling. So I was able to acquire that one off market. I had to pay a lot more for it. I had to, I think I paid $459, so I paid well more than $100,000 more for it. but structurally it was better. And all I did there was add a rear half dormer, which created me a 20 by 20 master bedroom on the upper level. And I was able to take that house from a 459, and now I had a base of the 700 having done the other one, and I was able to get 765 on my next one in there. But the real home run came by, I was watching movement across the street, and I saw there was this little old lady that had lived there, and I saw a lot of movement in and out of her house in a couple of days, and I went and talked to a guy that came out of the house. I said, "What's going on over there?" He said, "Oh, I just bought this house to flip." And I said, "You did?" And he goes, "Yeah." So he left, and I knocked on her door, and I said, "Did you just sell your house?" And she said, "No." She goes, "I have a contract laying here." And I said, "Well, how would you like to sell it and close tomorrow for cash?" And I was able to acquire that house for $375. And now I'm quite a ways away from being able to get the first one at 3 1/4. And the good of bad of going in is you got to move quickly, because if you take a 3 1/4 and turn it into 700, then you're not likely to get another seller to sell you something at 3 1/4. But this was an opportunity to pick up one at 359, which was a spectacular buy. And on that one, I decided to do my first major addition, and I put a 14 by the length of the house, so a 33 by 14 one level addition, but I did it with a reverse A, so the Cape Cod's going this way, and then I went the other way with a reverse A and created 12-foot ceilings into a room that you walk back into that has a wow effect that you can't even imagine. And the end of the story there was I ended up getting 835. So in a neighborhood that started out peaked at 700, within a year I turned it into an 835 top-end neighborhood on a 359 acquisition. But that sort of finished me in there, because there wasn't anything, you know, I offered somebody else $440 for a house right across the street from that one. So it's just working the neighborhood once you're in there and working it quickly. And I offered them $440, they said $470. I didn't want to go to $470. And then a year later, it sold for $600 as is, so it was pre-flip $600. Well, at $600, I can't make any money. And so I'm completely dead there. So I moved down, started just driving Falls Church, because Falls Church is quickly becoming North Arlington. And so it's becoming where everything's being either torn down or expanded and renovated. And I think in 5 years, Falls Church will just, you know, be incredible. But I drove through a neighborhood that, again, was Cape Cods. I love working with Cape Cods, and I found a neighborhood that had an abundance of them, but no longer were they brick and no longer did they have a basement. So now I've got less to work with. And I saw a Coming Soon pop up on this road, became Barrett Road, which I think they're going to rename Holmes Road here pretty quickly, because I'm now on my 4th house on Barrett Road. But I got my first one on Barrett Road, and now I'm paying, this was last March, not this March, but last March. I paid $415 for a house on Barrett Road. Well, now I've paid more than I was paying before by a lot, but I'm not paying $600 that the other neighborhood had become. And I'm paying $415, and I have no basement, and I don't have as near as nice. Solid 4 sides brick was a whole lot nicer than the clapboard that these were built with. And I got it for $415, and then he told me, hey, the girl down the 4 doors down is going to be selling. So I go down there and knock on that door. So I bought his on Tuesday. On Thursday, I bought his 4 doors down, but she unfortunately had put new HVAC and a new roof on, which was going to be not good for me because I was ripping the roof off because I was going to go 2-story, and the HVAC was going to have to be moved. So all of that cost me more money in acquisition, but I was still able to get it for $447, which nothing listed was under $550. So I was able to acquire that on Thursday, and then on Friday, another one on Barrett hit the market at $445, and I went over there and bought that one really quickly. So I bought 3 of them in 4 days, and I got that one for $447. I bought that one too quickly. I didn't realize it was in a floodplain, and I didn't realize that the street flooded horribly on the other end of Barrett. But I still escaped, amazingly. The county would not let me do my 2-story addition with a bump out addition on the back. They said you can't do anything outside that house. You can't put a dormer on, you can't put a front porch on, you can't put a bay window on. So I had to work with the existing box that I had bought, and found myself in a floodplain where the homeowner was going to be required to buy flood insurance the rest of their life, and that is around $3,000 a year. So you're adding quite a bit to the downside of a purchase with that. But in getting to know, I sat on those houses because obviously COVID hit last March. So I sat on those houses until probably September. Then I went after permits, thinking I'd have permits in 10 days like what in-person permits were, and I realized that permitting had gone from 10 days to 6 months. And so I didn't get a permit until, I guess, November of this past year. But in the meantime, I got to know everybody on this little part of Barrett. And of the 8 houses on Barrett, there were 2 that had 0 history of flooding, mine happening to be one of them. And July of 19, July of 20, the other 6 houses were 18 inches underwater on the main level, 2 years in a row. But the house next door to me and the one that I had bought had 0 water. And so in doing that, my brain is, why is my house not flooding when the rest of them are? And then I stood back and looked at it, and I realized the house next to me was like 4 feet higher up off the ground. So when the water jumped out of the creek, it would be turned back to the creek at my neighbor's house and avoided my house ever flooding. And so when I was able to sell my house, I could tell people that this house has never flooded, and the way that I could prove that was it was on a crawl space, and so we had to cut major holes into the crawl space to do plumbing, to do work underneath of the house. And when we took off the bottom of the house from 1950, it was bone dry. So there was no evidence of any water ever hitting the bottom of that house, which made me feel 100% comfortable that that house had in fact never flooded. And long story short, I was still able to take that from 447 to 765. And so it still worked out. But I then had the other 2 houses on Barrett where I could take the roof off and go upstairs. And going upstairs meant that I could take that 33 by 24 box instead of having that little narrow room upstairs, which I had to work with in the one I had just finished. When you go to 24 by 33 with 8-foot ceilings, I was able to get 3 bedrooms, a large laundry room, and 2 full baths up there. I mean, it is absolutely amazing what that little space turned into. And I'm talking 16-13, 14-13, and 13-12 on the bedroom sizes, which are just remarkable bedroom sizes in an old house. I then got bold and went on the back end. Let's go back a little bit and show you the pictures of the first one. Let's go back. Go back to the beginning. So this was the one in the floodplain. That's what I bought. And that's what it looked like inside. And then scroll over to a finished picture. That's what I turned it into. But as you can see on that third picture, you don't have very much ceiling height in that upstairs. Let's go to the one that we just now, when I talked about a month ago and was nearing completion of this one that I'm telling you about. This is what it looked like when I bought it. And that's what it looks like now. So I made it into a 2-story colonial on the front, and then on the back I put that A-frame addition, but I made it 35 by 20. So it's 20 feet deep, and so when you walk out of what was the main house into what is the addition, it is unbelievably spectacular. So I was talking to a few of my builder buddies. He said, "What do you think you're going to get for this?" I said, "I think I'm going to get $1 million." He goes, "Well, you're in a neighborhood that's 650, 700 tops." I said, "Well, I just got 765, and I didn't go 2-story, and I didn't have this massive." I said, "If I don't get it, it wasn't even worth doing." Well, I'm under contract now. List price was $949, and I'm above the list price. And I've cleared home inspection. I have my appraisal today. So let's move into the appraisal discussion, and then I'll come back to the other 2 houses on Barrett. I've got to meet an appraiser today and convince him of value close to $1 million in a neighborhood where it's 600,000-700,000. So my work's cut out for me. But I think as an agent, there were a couple of things that I was able to do better than other people, and one of them was master pricing, and second of all was mastering appraisals. I've been to every appraisal I've ever done in 4,500 appraisals. I've been to every one of them. And I've spent probably 10 hours scouring, looking at property, looking at potential comps, making a case for what I have to prove this afternoon. I'm confident I'll be able to do it because in 4,500 real estate transactions that I've done since 1987, I've had 2 houses not appraised. Now, just in a real estate angle, you need to be going to your appraisers, you need to be doing work on your appraisals, and you need to build a relationship with that appraiser. There's nothing illegal with that whatsoever. I've done it 4,500 times. But I don't have low appraisals. And hopefully today we'll continue that pattern. But I've always said that if you take a house in a neighborhood where there are plenty of comps, you can prove a variety of values with choosing the 3 comps you want to use. And if you're trying to get a high appraisal, then you've got to figure out what's the high-end capability. Now, I've actually found, just a little bit of background here, for some reason in Falls Church, if you're 22046, the value is 30% higher than it is anywhere else in Falls Church. And that's school-driven. Appraiser can't make a 30% adjustment on schools. So I'm going to use that to my favor because I can take a similar property. I found 2 similar properties that were pop the top and expand them that have sold for $1.2 million in 22046. Same square footage, pretty much identical type of properties. I don't know how an appraiser can't use those as comparables. They're all within 1.5 miles of my house. They're all pop tops. So they can't say there's a 30% adjustment because of schools. There obviously is. I mean, I saw one hit the market today for $900,000, and I'm going, you got to be kidding me? I mean, it's a little Rambler that, you know, I mean, you're going to get 900 for that? But anyway, so it's just a matter of making that work. So the appraisal is probably the biggest thing of mastering, other than the acquisition of properties, because you're not only selling it to the public is easier than selling it to the appraiser. So going on that. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and introduce Chelsea. Chelsea approached me about 2 months ago and said, I've watched you from afar and I'd like to learn the flipping business. She's obviously a lot younger than I am. Has a nice pedigree. She went to UCal Berkeley and then spent 4 years on Wall Street and has a very nice finance background. Has developed an algorithm that can search out properties that are suited to be flipped. And so we're working those lists now pretty extensively. But so she wanted to be mentored and wanted to learn the flipping business firsthand. And what have you learned in six weeks?
Oh my gosh, I've learned so much. I think the first thing it comes down to is a team, which Greg has built over his 37-year career in this business. And I think if you don't have, you know, a solid team of people, of contractors, of tradespeople, of masonry men and landscapers, it's hard to do a flip because it takes a lot of moving parts. And so I think if you have a team together that understands you know, each trade and each job, it makes it much easier. And you can solve problems much faster. Like the example of the driveway situation, I think would be good to discuss.
Oh yeah, so a buyer came through our open house 2 Saturdays ago, which was 8 days on the market. And I could tell that he was highly interested and had an agent, and luckily the agent was high quality, somebody I'd known for 30 years, which made this a whole lot easier transition. And she called me and said, the problem is they've got a 1-year-old and another one coming, and you've got 15 steep steps from the curb, no off-street parking, and this is looks to be a nightmare for them navigating this with little children. And so I said, well, can you meet me at the house and we will make some suggestions for you. And so within hours, I had my masonry and landscaping crew meet me there, and we put posts up on one side of the front yard and showed them how we could cut a driveway in, and had it all lined up with string, and so it was easy to visualize. We had height measurements so we could really explain what we were doing. And then on the other side, I had my landscapers build a Z walkway, so you'd go this way, that way, and then back the other way. So it's basically a landscaped walk that will get you down that hill on a flat surface. And we presented it to the potential buyer, and a half an hour later we had an above price contract on the property with none of that included, to be dealt with after closing.
Yeah.
Now we can probably go back in there and make a little bit of money on the back end as well too. And I certainly give him a fair shot on it, but I mean, that's either one of those is extensive work. But the contract has nothing tied to it whatsoever. What's interesting, we just had our home inspection, and we had one item inside of this house, which was my first time that I had basically built the house. And they wanted a powder room door adjusted 1/8 of an inch. And that was the entire inside home inspection. Outside, we have a dirty job. It's not a big job, but it's a dirty job. There's a crawl space under the house, and front to back, it's 24 feet. So at the midpoint, there's a wall in the crawl space, and that's what you would hook your flooring on, so that the flooring wasn't running 24-inch spans, it was running 12-foot spans. And so there is a little cutout where you would crawl next to that wall to get to the back side of the crawl space. And so imagine a rectangle, and of course the back left corner, which would be the farthest corner to crawl into in a 28-inch crawl space, that the home inspector did. Can you imagine? I mean, you're making, what, $400 on a home inspection, and you're going to crawl to the back of a crawl space? And you couldn't have paid me $5,000 to go in that crawl space. And the insulation needs to be installed on that back corner wall. Now, that insulation is just a piece of foam that's 2 inches thick, 4x8 sheet. And I could cut that sheet in half, and now I've got 16 feet of 24 inches, which will cover that back wall. And that costs $30, but it's a matter of, what do I got to pay somebody to go in there and glue that on for me to the back wall? My first bid on it was $500, and I go, I'm not paying you $500 for 10 minutes of work. And I goes, well, then you crawl in there. So, so I'm working through that. And then my only other thing on the entire home inspection was the back foundation, which is on a massive slab. I mean, we poured a 35 by 20 slab, 6 inches thick, and the siding is only 2 inches off of the ground. Vinyl siding, and it's on a slab. I don't understand how that can be a problem, but they want us to expose 4 more inches of the, so I just got to go in there and roll the sod back, dig down 33 feet of 4 inches, take a wheelbarrow of dirt out of there, and then we're solved. So that was the extent of our entire home inspection, which I think worked out pretty nicely on first time we actually built the house. Plus we got through all the county inspections too. The county inspections are now done virtually online. And I guess they all have their little things, but you're basically FaceTiming them and they're telling you where to stand and point the phone. But in all 4 bathrooms, they made us get on our hands and knees and show them the caulk line behind the toilets to make sure the caulk, that you actually caulk behind the toilets, which technically is hard to do because the caulk guns won't fit in that type of an angle to get back there. But we had caulked them. I mean, we know how to figure out how to caulk a toilet anyway. But it was amazing to the detail that they're doing. They're doing more detail on these virtual inspections than they would be doing on their regular inspections. I have the biggest island I've ever put in a kitchen. It's 8 feet 10 inches by 5 feet of quartz. It is spectacular. But I put 24-inch cabinets on both the front and the back, and then I put glass cabinets on the end. Well, on an island that's that big, you've got to have an outlet on both ends. Well, I don't want an outlet in the middle of my glass cabinet with a blue box sitting there. So I said, we'll put it in if they ask him to put it in, and sure enough, he did. And we were able to put it on the side of the glass cabinet so that you can see it from one side, but you can't see it face on. But we got the second. But they had like a couple of little electrical items that had to be done on the county inspection. So we've cleared county inspections. We've cleared home inspections. Today we'll have the appraisal, and hopefully we'll be going to work. But in doing that, working the neighborhood again, I noticed that there was a 90-year-old lady living next door to me that had moved out, and her probably 60-year-old son was coming weekly on Sunday to cut the grass. I left him my painter told me that they're thinking of selling next door, and the guy across the street is probably going to list the house. And I go, well, I better get on this one quick. And I left my business card on his front door. I hear you're thinking of selling. You don't need an agent, even though I am one. I can make you a cash offer immediately. And so he called me, and nothing listed in all of Falls Church under $550, even for the junk, and he sold it to me for $440 cash. That was unbelievable. But they're there if you go look for them. If you go look for them, they are there. You know, like, why would somebody sell for $440 when nothing on the market is listed under $550? But they did. So now we will do we've got 6718 sold or under contract. We have 6720 that we're closing on the 19th. We're working on 6726, and we've already sold 6644, and so we'd like to stay right there. But the acquisition is going to take off market somebody. But people say, "Oh, well, you'll never get one now." Well, we just did, and now that I've pushed the high nines contract through, if it happens on Barrett like it happened on Tyler, I went 700, 765, 835. I'm sitting in a pretty nice situation now when my starting point is high enough that there was really nice profit, even sitting on these houses for 14 months. So the cost of acquisition was far lower than the cost of carrying it and just sitting on it. So it worked out tremendously.
So this is a video of our most recent project that we're working on right now, which is 6726 Barrett. And this is pre-demolition. So you can see it's this was the footprint that we worked with for both of the ones on Barrett. And so you can kind of get an idea for how small the kitchen was and how small the attic is, and what Greg was able to do with adding the addition in the back, as well as, you know, getting a second story in there. And this seller had lived there his whole life.
Whole life.
Yeah.
And they were living in Swallow. It was amazing. And I bought this from them for $415 in March a year ago. They had no mortgage on the property, so they were sitting on a whole lot of cash, and they continued to live in Swallow for the next year. I mean, so bad that I think I've developed mold infection from being in there. And I mean, it's dreadful. Dreadful, dreadful. Wait till we get upstairs.
Yeah, this was after we cleaned it up a little bit, but looks like someone was dragged down those stairs. Definitely have to get your hands dirty in this business.
They have a shower that's 4 feet on one side and 5.5 feet on the other side. But now you get into their master bedroom. They labeled their drawers so that they knew where they put stuff on the outside. But look at these. Did you see the holes in the wall yet?
Yeah.
Look at. There were cut out holes in the wall with clothes stuck in there. We never figured out what that was all about. But then instead of painting the room, they took cheap cardboard, not cardboard, like poster board,
yeah,
but real cheap, and taped it all over the entire wall with Scotch tape.
Yeah.
So you bought this house and they just left all that stuff in there for you guys?
Well, they left a whole lot more than that, 3 dumpsters.
Yeah.
This is after we had cleaned it out.
And I would say that's kind of a offering to these sellers when you're buying as is leave whatever you don't want to take, because oftentimes they just have so much junk that it seems overbearing to remove it all. So if you offer them to just leave it, we're going to have dumpsters there anyway. So that's exactly, yeah.
The biggest objection to selling is, where am I going to go? Because I've lived here my entire life, and what about all this stuff?
Yeah.
And you know, if you can solve some of those problems for them. I mean, this poor guy that I let this guy rent back at $1,800 a month for a year, and in a year he still hadn't figured out where he was going, and now he's in a hotel. You know, I mean, he's sitting on close to $400,000 in cash, and not, you know, it just what you see is just amazing.
Yeah.
Let's open up to some questions.
Well, the last slide
Yeah.
is cost. So if you want to discuss kind of just in general how much things cost and what percentage of the project
Well,
is for
yeah,
what.
let's talk a little bit about flipping right now. The game has changed over the last year. A 2x4 a year ago was $2.60. Today it's $8. And you use a whole lot of 2x4s than what we just did. But worse than that is the plywood. And we had to plywood the entire addition and the 2 roofs. And that plywood was $11 a sheet. It's now $53 a sheet. It's up 5 times. And then the question is, can you get it? Now, I've been able to, for 10 years I was going between Home Depot and Lowe's and say, which one of you two is going to just give me a deal? I don't want to, I'm spending 6 figures in both of your stores, but I'm willing to drop one of the stores if somebody will treat me a little bit differently. And I'll never forget, there was a manager that says, I said, I treat everybody the same whether they spend $2 in here or whether they spend $200,000 in here. I said, that's your problem. You can't treat us the same. I know it's a nice adage, but you can't. And because I walk out the door and you've lost a whole lot of money. But I finally have, over the last 3 years, have developed an incredible relationship with the pro desk at Lowe's in Sterling, and then the number 2 person in that store. And I can't fathom the amount of money they now save me. Like he called me yesterday and said, I have a double wall oven, upper end, retails at $4,400. You can have it for $395. I don't know where it's going, but right now it's going in my garage. You know?
Yeah.
And this is brand new. I mean, like in this house that we just sold, the appliance package was $9,200 retail, and I got it for $2,200. I mean, I have three upper end refrigerators in my garage now that retail at between $3,500 and $4,000. That the most I paid for any of those was $900. They're all brand new, and so I figured that out. I've figured cabinets out. I figured out everything you can figure out on pricing.
Hey Greg, how are you?
How you doing, Dave?
I'm doing all right. So Catherine has a question, and she wants to know, are you an engineer or an architect?
Oh, that's wonderful, yes. No, I basically sketch it out on a napkin. The designs are all mine, and then I take it to an architect who hires engineers. So that process, I pay about $4,900 to have it architectural drawings and engineered. It then has to be permitted. Sometimes I run the easy permits. I can run the electrical, mechanical, and plumbing permits through in 24 hours myself, but the building permit still taking months, and so I hire somebody to do that. They don't seem to be much better, but I don't have the time to call them every day for 6 months. But that process is survey. You've got a survey cost. You've got permitting costs. Permitting on the last house that I just did with major additions to it, the total permitting was probably $1,300. The architect and the engineering was $4,900. Expediting it was $800. Survey, surveys these days are expensive. I mean, what, $700, $800? I've got a survey for still not only does he do it for $350, he'll have to do 6 or 7 revisions before we get out of the county, and he's not even charging me for the revisions. So it's a matter of finding people that are good, that will work for good numbers. They're there.
Yep.
It takes time to put a team together like I have. I mean, my team is spectacular. Any other questions here?
I was a little late. My apologies, I was a little late. I don't know. I know you've been in the business a very long time, and so to me, the numbers for someone like me seem overwhelming to start buying and flipping. So did you discuss, like, you just have regular financing? Do you seek private lenders sometimes? Or
Financing and flipping is either you have real deep pockets or you deal with what's called hard money. And hard money is people that will loan you money to flip properties. Typically, hard money interest rates are 12 to 15%. Points go 2 to 5% on points. I've been working with a guy that's probably a billionaire, private lender, has a mortgage company, but basically lends to people like me. And I'm very comfortable at 13.5% interest with 0 points, 125% acquisition cost loan. Like if I buy something tomorrow at 400, he'll loan me 500 tomorrow. No questions asked, doesn't need to see the property. I mean, but that's a relationship that was built. But, good question. You find something, what I tell people is you find something, you bring it to me, we'll work the deal together because we'll use my resources, my ability. I mean, I'm perfectly willing to do that.
So, Greg, that kind of feeds into another question that we've gotten online. Do you do mentoring, and how does that process work?
Well, that was what we were going to close with. We're developing a mentoring program right now, having worked with Chelsea now for 6 weeks. I think there's a program here. There seems to be a big desire. I'm getting a lot of contacts on it. I'm out of the Mike Ferry's training system in real estate. I was one of Mike's first superstars, and I trained real estate agents. I mean, I was involved in that training process that now is a multi-million-dollar operation through Mike Ferry, and I was one of the 12 original superstars at the Mike Ferry organization. So I have a background in that I think can translate into what we're doing, but we're not only thinking of doing mentoring where somebody can call me 24/7, but we'll make an announcements. Today we are going to be doing X. If you want to come see, you're welcome to come see the process. And so we will walk people through hands-on mentoring, and very soon I will be coming out with a program. I think we're at our time, aren't we?
Yeah. Great.
I think I'm good. I appreciate your time, and boy, that flew by.
Thank you.
Thank you.